Hey guys, how are you witches today? Welcome back to Eerie Covenant. So, in this video, we are going to be discussing Witch History Part 3. Oh my god. I have tried to kill this little fly that has been in here for like an hour now. I had to restart this video 3 times over it and I'm not doing it again. So let's carry on. I will try not to let it bother me. Alright. So, the term pagan comes from the Latin word paganus, if I pronounce that right, a term to describe anyone with a tradition outside Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Islam. When Christianity began to take over the Roman Empire, it did so more in the city side than the countryside. So the countryside still practiced the old ways. Pagans were defined as anyone involved with a religious act, ceremony, or ritual that is not Christianity. However, the other religions mentioned above uses it to describe it the same. So those religions mentioned all described any other religion besides theirs as paganism. Others simply define it as being without a religion, which that's how I identify paganism. There are many different kinds of pagan traditions, but they all have one thing in common: a divine presence in nature. Paganism was traced back to the beginning of communities and times. They tried to stop it in the burning times, putting fear and a halt to pagan thinking. Then in the 1700s, Greek pagan thinking was slightly accepted again. And then again, paganism was on the rise in the 18th century. So let's discuss some popular ancient pagan traditions. We have Native American, the Celtic, the Greco-Roman, Egyptian, and Norse. I found some information on these and I wanted to break down each individual's belief. So, Native Americans. Ceremony and ritual has always played a huge part in Native American culture and practice. Their beliefs were their very being and consisted of methods of getting food, agriculture, ceremonial, and ritual rites that provided them power to conquer life's difficulties, like events such as puberty, marriage, and death, just to name a few. They had a variety of rituals like ghost dancing, death ceremonies, green corn festivals, healing rituals, medicine, peyote worship, powwows, and vision quests. Celtic traditions, people of Western Europe, now known as the Celts. Between 500 BC and 500 AD, British, Scottish, and Irish was of a Celtic tradition. They were one of the larger pagan groups during the Iron Age of the European family. Predated before Christian times, their Celtic pantheon consists of numerous recorded theonyms. According to Greek accounts, in Britain and Ireland there were priestly castes of Celtic specialists known as the Druids, but little is known about them. Celts made offerings to their deities, constructed temples and shrines, and believed the world to be sacred, as most pagans do. A sacred place, But mainly, they believed trees or groves of trees were sacred. Their offerings were buried or thrown into rivers. And Roman sources say the Celtic Druids engaged in human sacrifice, apparently built wicker human figures and burned them with a human in it, according to Julius Caesar. Historians debunk this, though. They held the Druids in a high standing, sort of like priests to the Celts. Their roles and responsibilities varied, but writings from Caesar says they were concerned with divine worship, sacrifice, and ritual rites. But again, historians debunked the sacrifice thing. Celts in Ireland were also visionary poets, looked at as reciting artists with magical powers. I thought that was just a cool fact to kind of throw in there. Alright, let's flip this around and see what else we got. Ancient Druidism, there were 3 specialties of how they held practice. 1, the bards, if I'm pronouncing that right. Keepers of their tradition, of the memories of their community, custodians of the sacredness of the world. In Ireland, they trained for 12 years, learning poetry, grammar, stories, and philosophy. Second, we have the Ovates, if I pronounce that right too. They worked with the process of death and regeneration. They were the healers of the community, specialized in divination, conversing with ancestors, and prophets of the future. And 3, we have the Druids, or the Druidess. Like we said earlier, they had special class in the community. They performed that of a priest. They trained for 20 years plus and led public rituals held in sacred trees, like shamans, guiding and containing rites. They also believed in life in another world after death, that they'd be carried to this other world once their soul left their body. Now we have the Greco-Romans. This is a poly belief worship of many gods and goddesses who influenced all natural phenomenon. The study of nature, knowledge, and values. The way they worshipped depended on the god or goddess that they worshipped. Offerings were made, worship was daily, and every meal was partly the gods that they, and the festivals and holidays dedicated to their gods. And this varied depending on which deity that they had. There was no set religious belief to follow. They believed death was not an end to life or existence in the underworld. You still existed in the underworld, and what they took with them in death went with them to the underworld. I think that's pretty cool. Now we have the Egyptian path or tradition, which I could probably talk about all day, but I had to stay brief. It was a combination of beliefs and practices which included magic, mythology, science, medicine, spiritualism, herbology, and an understanding of higher power and life after death. These things led a big part of everyday life for them. Life on earth was seen only as a spiritual journey, and one part of it, as life was eternal to them. To live after death, they had to live a worthy life. They had to uphold a life of harmony and understanding that what they did in their life affected them and others. They had to depend on each other for balance. I think there's something really wise about that. This was the will of their gods, and to live a pleasurable and happy life. This enabled their gods to do better tasks if they maintained this life in this balance. The underlying principle of Egyptian tradition was known as Heka, which is magic personified in the god Heka, who always existed and was present in the art of creation, the god of magic and medicine, but also enabled the gods to perform their function and allowed humans to commune with their gods. The gods each had their own area of specialty. Death rituals were consisting of preserving or mummifying the body, freeing the soul, and sending it on its way. The lower class could not afford to mummify their dead, only the upper class could, so not everyone was mummified. So that's a common belief. People think that everyone that died was mummified, but it was only the upper class that could afford it. But Egyptians had a clear understanding on the universe and how the world worked, and humanity's place in the world or the universe. I think they were amazing and amazingly in touch with the universe and magic. Same with the ancient Norse, and that is what is next, Old Norse. Engaged in an ancient war until realizing they were equally as powerful as the divided deities. Now, my pronunciation on these, I don't know if they're right, Aesir and Vanir. Among their widespread deities were gods Odin and Thor. Their world was inhabited by various mythological creatures like giants, elves, land spirits, and fairies. Also, other realms, multiple afterlife realms, and several controlled by a deity. They focused heavily on ritual practice, with kings carrying out animal sacrifice. Various places were used, but groves and lakes were initially used. Norse society contained sorcerers, and various forms of burials were conducted. The Norse used runes by stones or even bones for divination purposes to receive messages through the symbols from their gods or deities. Festivals and rituals of war were carried out as well. I really love the Norse path. I think it's really cool. I love all these paths, and there are so many now with the umbrella terms and different traditions we follow today. I really feel that we kind of take a part of each with our paganism, and that's cool too. But this info is what I found, and not modern day paganism we know today, but the true old ways. Follow your path. Nothing's wrong, nothing's right, but balance is everything. I want you to comment me your path down below. Let's share our beliefs and our traditions. I'm putting the resources of my research for this video in the description, the websites that I had gotten my information from, if you are interested. They were really good articles, and I could not fit all of it in here. So if you want to check those out, go ahead. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and with love and light from Eerie Covenant.